Okay, and welcome back. Hour number 2. Joel Skousen joins us tonight. A special occasion. We want to keep watch on what's happening with the Trump administration. There was a major move today, and I'm sure most all of you know. Mr. H.R. McMaster is gone, replaced by the one guy that has always struck me as being at least 2 cards short of a full deck. This guy is out there. He is a super war hawk. His name is John R. Bolton. A few quick facts about Bolton. One reporter said that in early January, citing sources saying Bolton is expected to be part of the next phase of Trump's national security team. Well, he is now. Bolton, a Fox News contributor, will take office on April the 9th. He served under President George W. Bush as Assistant Secretary of State and Ambassador to the UN. One area where he and Trump contrast sharply is the Iraq War. Trump has called the war a huge mistake, while Bolton insists it was the correct move. He and Trump are staunch opponents of the Iran nuclear deal, but Bolton has gone so far as to call for Iran to be bombed. Yes, that wasn't just John McCain, it was Bolton. He also wrote a Wall Street Journal op-ed last month, entitled The Legal Case for Striking North Korea First. Bolton served as one of Mitt Romney's foreign policy advisors during his 2012 failed presidential bid. Joel, welcome back. Not good news for peace.
Well, certainly John Bolton is the ultimate war hawk, but it's interesting, as I've studied his career in detail, I have to say that he doesn't have all the signs of a globalist or a neocon. And let me explain. There are certain globalist positions. I mean, for example, the Project for the New American Century was started by neocons Irving Kristol and or William Kristol and
Bill Kristol,
Hagen. And of course, it talked about needing a new Pearl Harbor and talking about American dominance and strength around the world, etc. And this was a globalist initiative to justify intervention, especially in the Middle East, and Iraq was the showcase of that. But all of the really consistent globalists and neocons have always been in favor of United Nations intervention. They've been in favor of the International Criminal Court and getting the U.S. involved in global government. And they've been in favor of the pacification or taking a passive approach, protecting North Korea. And those 3 issues, John Bolton has differed consistently all through his career. He has always been a realist about North Korea. This cannot be bought. He opposed the Clinton administration giving in to their claims that they were going to disarm. He proved to be right in that regard. He's still been absolutely consistent against the criminal court. But he has been problematic in the sense that he equally views Iran as an enemy, and Iran is nowhere near in the category of North Korea. And so I have trouble viewing John R. Bolton as a globalist or a neocon. He just really is a war hawk. And that's going to prove, I think, beneficial. I've said openly on your show and other people in my World Affairs brief that North Korea cannot be solved with a peace negotiation. Communists have never disarmed. Never. They faked their own demise in the fall of the Soviet Union, but they didn't disarm. They've never disarmed in China. They never will. They don't have any. And North Korea will never disarm. So whatever will be done will be, a false type of disarmament to buy time and to prepare for the global. So Bolton is right on that issue, and I'm encouraged that he might tip the balance. And one of the things that Trump really was bothered about McMaster was that he kept pushing for this bloody nose strike, and the military people in the Pentagon said that's a fool's paradise. Kim is going to respond with a war in South Korea. You either have to take him out preventively as Bolton is proposing, or you don't go in at all, but you just don't go halfway measures with someplace, like North Korea backing by China and Russia. But Bolton is a real problem in terms of Iran. I mean, he bought into the Iraq that Saddam Hussein was a problem when he wasn't. He's bought into the fact that Iran is a existential threat, which it isn't. It's basically preparing, against knowing that it's in the crosshairs of the globalists for annihilation, is trying to protect itself by becoming self-sufficient in arms production, which the globalists don't want. So I have trouble labeling him as a globalist.
He's an oddball. He is an oddball. There's no doubt.
Yeah,
he's a rogue unto himself with his views. He's not a card-carrying member of the globalist elite or any of their functionaries.
He has been a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, isn't currently.
But he's a unique individual, and I guess, is he crazy? What is he? I don't know.
No. He's not crazy. He's a rough guy around the edges. I mean, one of the most telling things was he never did get confirmation as ambassador to the UN. And a lot of the globalist senators were opposing him. And that's kind of telling. He was named in a recess appointment by George W. Bush and never did get confirmed. When it came up for confirmation the second time, he decided to resign. And
that's right. I forgot about that. That's why he resigned.
That's right.
How
because
interesting.
He wasn't going to get confirmed. Now, had he been a true globalist, he would have been confirmed.
Oh, they would have rubber stamped him, sure.
As a slam dunk. And so that's what's interesting, is that he's going to be on the right side of the issue for North Korea and will strengthen Trump's determination to take care of this militarily, but he's going to be on the wrong side in the Middle East on Iran. And
and when you say Iran, we almost have to say Russia in the same, certainly, paragraph. They're very close.
Bolton's opinions actually mirror more closely than any of the other people in the administration my own view. He is in favor of Russia's intervention in Syria. He's not for the removal of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, knowing that the terrorists backed by the U.S. will create a bloodbath there. But he is against Russia in terms of its long-term international weapons of mass destruction intent to take down the West someday.
Right. Now,
so how he gets completely off on the rails on Iran, and Iraq is a problem that I don't quite understand. I mean, he's obviously seeing the nuances of the Russian situation in Syria, but doesn't see the globalist agenda going on in Iraq. He didn't see it when he was part of the project of New American Century, and he, to this day, is one of the directors there.
PNAC. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder how this is going over in Pyongyang. This is
they're worried.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This was
because he sees right through this peace offensive of and if anybody's going to sabotage it with Donald Trump, it's going to be John R. Bolton, and that I see as a positive. The Iran thing can negate that and be just as big a negative in the long term.
Could be huge. Get Israelis involved, and my goodness.
That's right.
On Thursday, today, H.R. McMaster leaves. He was, as Joel said, probably one of the primary proponents of the bloody nose attack strategy, which we know isn't going to work. It doesn't work. National Security Advisor now is John Bolton. Kim and the others are probably up late or up early. This is not good news for them. Now, Kim, and let's look at this. Kim, and I said this last time, bought himself 10 weeks. And you corrected me last time you were on. He said, no, he did much more than that. He effectively disarmed, at least on an interim basis, the Trump war machine that was geared up and focused on the Korean Peninsula. Now, that may or may not still hold true. I don't know with Bolton. We'll have to see. The war games with South Korea are scheduled for April 1st. The talks with Kim, May, is it?
In May, yes, in May.
Yeah. So he did get on the short term of the deal some breathing room. What do you think his research and development teams are doing now?
Well, they're absolutely working and continuing to work
25 hours a day.
miniaturization of nuclear weapons and on the metallurgy of getting a warhead that can survive reentry, the two things that they don't yet have or haven't had as of the last test.
Which Beijing could fly them in an airplane in a matter of hours.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the only reason why they haven't been just giving this outright, is that they're not ready to unleash Kim on the world yet. And remember, North Korea has always been preserved as a trigger event for World War III. It's a perfect excuse to have a crazy man, or the appearance of someone crazy. He's not crazy, but the appearance of somebody unstable to start World War III. Then Russia and China say, hey, it's not our fault. Even though they come to the support of North Korea.
Right.
And Trump is, as I've explained before in the show, is threatening to blow up this trigger event before it's time, before Russia and China are ready. And it would still be a real problematic conventional war if it goes conventional, because if you get troops involved and you try to invade North Korea, it's going to be like South Vietnam. You're going to have Russian and Chinese reinforcements, at least supply ships coming in. And now, how Bolton would, I know that McMaster would say, given the standard excuse, you can't attack or stop Russian and Chinese resupply because they'll cause World War III. Bolton may be a stronger hawk on that issue.
Wow. Stopping and searching Russian and Chinese cargo ships. Wow.
Yeah, so this is a real game changer, Jeff.
Oh, yes, that's why I asked you to come on. I know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we think about, and you and I both know, and I think most of you listening know, that North Korea is burning the midnight oil with their research and development. They're not slowing down at all. Kim got a window of opportunity here to build, to improve, and he's going to do it. He has said many times that disarming, denuclearizing is not on the table. Now, South Korea is saying, yes, Kim gave us his word that he is in favor of denuclearizing his country and working toward reunification, blah, blah, blah. I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all.
No, the only reason he said that, I'm convinced, is because China pressured him to say, look, you've got to do whatever it takes to stop Trump from attacking, because we're not ready to start World War III and back you up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what drove him to the table. I mean, nothing. Look, Chinese can't save face. He's lost tremendous face by having to do a turnaround from saying, I will never give up these two things, the missile systems or the nuclear, and then turning around and say, I'm ready for doing it. I mean, that's a severe loss of faith in North Korea.
Yes.
And for him to do that, it could only have been another Oriental country pressuring him to do that, and that had to be China.
I can't think that the North Korean people are really happy with this. They've been brought up with the antithetical view. Never, if we get nuclear weapons, will we give them up. And now he's talking about denuclearizing? I don't think so.
I have a feeling, though, that it's being whispered about in communist circles that he's just playing the West.
Has to be.
Don't lose faith in Leader Kim, yeah.
Right. No, it has to be. I've seen no stories at all about North Koreans. You won't. We're not going to get a man on the street in Pyongyang to discuss this issue at all. It won't happen.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. We have talks in May. What do you think?
But going on that theme, as I pointed out last time on your show, those talks aren't going to be resolved in anything less than 6 months. So he's not just buying a month. If Trump engages in talks, they're going to go on for 6 months. And
they'll keep postponing. Yes, they'll take recesses.
John Bolton is going to be able, as National Security Advisor, to say these talks are going nowhere, and we need to stop them. And there'll be other advisors, of course, countering, who are globalists still surrounding Donald Trump. They'll be fighting John Bolton on this. But he's going to be a voice in there to try to end the talks early when they're not going anywhere. But I still think this thing has delayed any attack at least until September at the best.
Wow. All right. Marines were training, as you know, in the eastern Sierras for cold weather. The training has been increased in terms of numbers. Maybe they're looking down the road to next fall, winter.
Well, the Marines do prepare long-term. They're not short-term, training people. I say that as a former Marine officer, and they'll be ready for whatever contingency. But I'll tell you, if you look at the terrain, hopefully people got a view of that during the Olympics, of the mountainous terrain in North Korea. I mean, this is like the Battle of Okinawa, one hill, ridge, mountain, stream after another, filled with tunnels and pre-positioned places. I mean, you just don't want to get in there with a ground force against North Korea. It's going to be a very, very bloody affair. That's why, as I've outlined, you need to simply decapitate its military forces and cut off all and put a complete shipping embargo so you starve them out. You do not want to go in there and do a ground battle with North Koreans.
How many would die in a war like this? We're not just going to go in there and nuke them and bunker bust them. They're going to have to be ground troops, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. There don't have to be ground troops.
There's a way to do this without.
You can decapitate them with air and missile power. The three arms of their leg, the artillery forces, the air bases, and the missile forces, and put a complete blockade against. And
what happens to the million-man army and woman?
Well, what do they do? Yeah, if they decide to come across the border, then you can handle them, in a mass. But that means they're being destroyed, not U.S. troops trying to invade their country. In other words, I'm thinking a preemptive, massive artillery, or not artillery, but artillery, air power, and cruise missile strike against North Korea within a week's period could decapitate his military capability without losing, on the North Korean side, without killing any more than probably, a few thousand civilians.
Really? That's a very optimistic view. That's interesting. Who was it that said in our government that a war with North Korea would cost the lives of 10,000 Americans in the first week? Troops. Somebody said that recently.
Yeah, I remember reading that too. I don't remember who said it, but I can tell you that's based on the scenario of a ground invasion, which is foolishness, in that scenario. As I say, you can bring a nation to its knees. Sure, the international community is going to weep and wail about a humanitarian crisis of people starving in North Korea. But that's the only way that you can bring it to a conclusion, is to cause, uprising among the people there against the North Korean regime, rather than an invasion of troops. I mean, that's going to kill a lot of Americans. It's going to kill a lot of South Koreans and a lot of North Koreans as well. That's the least of the options, I think.
Right. Okay, here's a story from Press TV. Pentagon warns 10,000 U.S. soldiers will die in the opening days of a North Korean war. Let me read just a little bit here. I haven't read this since it came out on March 2nd. U.S. military chiefs have reportedly warned that a war with North Korea could result in the death or injury of around 10,000 American soldiers in just the opening days, with the number far exceeding the total 7,000 killed in fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. The revelation emerged on Thursday after top military leaders in the U.S. attended a classified gathering in Hawaii to raise their concerns and discuss various scenarios that would arise in the early stages of a prospective U.S.-North Korea conflict. Pentagon officials in the meeting, led by Army Chief of Staff General Mark Milley and U.S. Special Operations Commander General Raymond Thomas, claimed that the opening days of the full-scale war with North Korea would be catastrophic. Based on calculations, 10,000 U.S. would be killed or injured in the first few days alone. The brutality of this will be beyond the experience of any living soldier, said the U.S. Army Chief of Staff in the gathering.
Yeah, it's very predictable, and it tells me that they're planning a conventional war there with troop invasion, and that's just stupid. You don't have to do that.
Does that sound like John Bolton to you?
No, it doesn't. It sounds like globalist-trained, high-ranking military officers that are, set on doing what they've always done, is do a Vietnam-style progressive invasion of the country. And, it sounds like they're trying to discourage Trump from doing that, too. And that's why I'm suspicious that nobody is touting the preemptive, the real full three-legged preemptive strike that I'm advocating in taking out their offensive capability, which is a smart thing to do. I mean, sure, it doesn't win a war. It takes a while then to starve them into submission, but it's just like the old siege. I mean, you can do a siege longer than they can, and North Korea doesn't have a good ability about
unless for some reason, on humanitarian grounds or whatever, the Russians and the Chinese, perhaps, which both countries share a border with North Korea, say no more of this starvation. We're going in, just like the Russians have done in Syria, and like they did in East Ukraine. All right, they started to send in humanitarian.
You could even do that, Jeff. You could even allow in humanitarian aid. You can allow them to give food. Things in there, but you see, Kim can no longer threaten anyone. If you take out his missile forces,
right,
you bomb all the entrances of his nuclear production facilities so that he can't get to them. It may not destroy them underground, but he can't get to them, and you keep bombing them so that he can't work on them. And you take out all the airfields, bomb all the airplanes, and take out his artillery forces on the DMZ, and he's neutered.
You mean those biplanes he has? Take those out?
Well, he only has about 40, real modern aircraft. The rest of them are World War II aircraft.
He actually does have biplanes, by the way, as you know. They're Russian-built. I don't know what the heck they are, but they're odd. Okay, well, that's a pretty darn good synopsis of where we are right now. This issue of South Korea and American military forces conducting huge ground military exercises in conjunction with air and naval, of course, and all that. Could that be a smokescreen? Or is that something that may be changed and being changed under orders by the president and maybe would anger the Pentagon? Maybe they want a traditional war to test out their tactics, their weapon systems. These are perfect laboratories for that.
Well, anything's possible in a hypothetical sense. I'm worried about Trump getting the wrong advice. Unfortunately, he has no military background whatsoever. He has no understanding of or ability to counter what they tell him. So he's going to be at the mercy of whatever they give him. They're going to give him 3 options probably, and they won't be. Any of them will be what I'm suggesting, and I think that. It's going to cause if he does attack any type of attack, it won't be sufficient to neuter the three legs of their offensive power, and I think we're going to have a North Korean war. If Trump gets talked into continuing talks and in another agreement, if he's going to get snookered into another false peace agreement like the previous 4 that have done with North Korea, then it's going to be delayed until the next decade, and we're going to see it once again become the trigger event for World War III. And as I've said, if he does end up saying, these talks aren't going anywhere, I don't trust Kim, we're going to attack. If it's not done correctly and it gets into a full-blown conventional war, it'll turn into a Vietnam situation.
Yes.
And his advisors and the bad press and all of the deaths of American servicemen will cause them to quit the war just like they did in Vietnam. And once again, North Korea will be preserved to live again for another. It
literally could survive and reconfigure itself. You're right.
Absolutely.
All right. Hold on a minute. Joel and I will be right back. Okay, welcome back. Talking with Joel Skousen about the big news today, and that is John Bolton is now the National Security Advisor to President Donald Trump. Is there some kind of a pattern emerging here in the Trump presidency now? With the appearance of chaos is one thing. Hey, here's a story. Wait a minute, let me look at this. The Friday firings, the damning texts, the sheer speed and chaos that swirls every day around Donald Trump. As a blow-in, I'm still astounded by it all. But behind what sometimes looks disconnected in terms of events, a pattern is emerging. The 45th President of the United States is afraid of the FBI Mueller investigation into possible Russian collusion over the 2016 election. It puts the President Donald Trump almost at war with the FBI, an otherwise trusted institution. Trusted by whom? I don't know. The sacking of the former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is just the latest example. Let me see if I can find what he's going to get to here in terms of a pattern. All right, come on, get to the point. But in the Trump heartlands, his supporters may fully accept that their president's explanation that the FBI and other institutions are corrupt and part of an anti-Trump deep state conspiracy. If you believe that, then any move against Mr. Mueller would seem reasonable. Well, he's not getting to the point here that the headline would suggest. So let me ask you, do you see any kind of a cohesion coming together? He continues to appoint people that are rather strong characters, and yet he's himself rather weak in terms of being influenced. And you were the first to bring that out, as we've mentioned many times. What do you see here? McCabe, how much clout will Bolton have when it comes to sitting down with Trump, looking him in the eye and telling him, this is what we have to do? You there, Joel? Oh, he's not there. Oh, there he is.
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now. Did you hear anything I said?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think that Bolton will be very, very effective in influencing Donald Trump, more so than McMaster and Tillerson, who Trump both felt were all too establishment. Bolton doesn't come across as establishment, even though he has backed some of these neocon initiatives in the past. But he's extremely effective at driving home his point, and I think that's going to mean a lot. McMaster, for example, tried to reason in an academic way with Trump.
Too intellectual, too academic.
Yeah,
I got you.
It was too academic, too intellectual, but Bolton bores down right to the point. When you hear him talk about North Korea, there's no way around it. He's got the facts, he's got the arguments, and I think that Trump's instinct originally has been that North Korea is a problem that can be only solved militarily, and so he's going to be open to that. So I think we're going to see at this juncture the undermining of Trump's diplomacy initiative being suckered into. I mean, he accepted that invitation from the South Koreans without even counseling with any of the
didn't ask anybody
about the downside of that.
They must still be laughing about that too.
But that said, the piece that you were reading from sounds just very similar to Mike Brzezinski, of MSNBC and Morning Joe, where she was talking about the conspiracy theory that Donald Trump has foisted upon the world about the deep state. Well, it wasn't Donald Trump that started this about the deep state. It was Edward Snowden and Greenwald at the Intercept who first coined the word the deep state. I used to call it the dark side of government because it's much deeper. I mean, even Sean Hannity of Fox News is talking about the deep state, and he's a veteran conspiracy denier. So I don't think he really understands what the implications of the deep state are. Going clear back to the assassination of JFK or the cover-up of TW-800 or the Oklahoma City bombing or 9/11, which the deep state was deeply involved in. But nevertheless, you can see that the establishment is very, very worried that the American people are getting onto the fact that there is a conspiracy of power that's running this government outside of the traditional...
75% of Americans believe that now.
Yeah,
they buy into the deep state idea.
Yeah. But as I say, they haven't been told the full story. In tomorrow's World Affairs Brief, and your listeners can get a free copy by emailing me at editor@worldaffairsbrief.com, I'm publishing two very important pieces, almost in their entirety. One of them is a fascinating article written by Joseph DeGenova at a speech he gave to the Hillsdale College here in January. And he outlines, as a prosecutor, exactly all the violations that that Comey did and that Mueller are doing in violating all the prosecutorial code with the Clinton email scandal, how they refused to call a grand jury so that they didn't have to subpoena anybody. They gave people, deals so that they wouldn't have to testify, and gave them immunity when they didn't have to. And he just goes through line by line and shows how this is all, he calls it the politicization of the FBI. But he's wrong about that. The only thing he's wrong about is the title. It isn't the politicization. This isn't a bunch of Democrats trying to undo Donald Trump because he's a Republican. This is deep state people who are trying to fight against a candidate the establishment didn't want there any more than they wanted Romney. Romney was bending over backwards to do anything the establishment wanted to do.
Yeah,
but
he did. It was embarrassing.
He wasn't an insider, and so they were afraid of what he would see or do in the White House. And Trump is not an insider, in my opinion. I think he's a manipulable dupe. Useful idiot for them, an egomaniac that can be manipulated. But he is slowing down their agenda. That's the great thing that he's done unwittingly, is that he's keeping them fighting him day and night and stopping him and manipulating, and it's slowing down their agenda. They haven't gone forward with any major agenda in the neocon or globalist agenda yet this year. And that
very interesting point. Very interesting observation. Yeah, I agree.
That's a success, even though Trump is bumbling most things. Unwitting, unplanned, but it's a success. How interesting. All right, here's another one. You mentioned Romney real quick, and then I'm going to go to the heart of the matter here. Senator Romney? Yes? Yeah, shoo-in Utah.
Right, okay. Now, John Bolton. Most important thing we can do is look at John Bolton's words, okay? So I'm going to read some of John Bolton's words for you. North Korea. Quote, "It's important to stand behind our South Korean allies, but if we pay heed to the lessons of history, talking to North Korea will be fruitless." End quote. All right? Here's
Absolutely true.
Yeah, here's
Absolutely true.
Quote, "We have a very limited amount of time left before North Korea gains deliverable nuclear weapons. We've got to look at the very unattractive choice of using military force to deny them that capability." End quote.
Again, absolutely true.
Here's a tweet. Quote, "Those content with living with a nuclear North Korea have argued that it can be contained and deterred like the Soviet Union during the Cold War. That assessment is deeply flawed." End quote.
Well, you know what was interesting about that quote, and I'm familiar with that, is that, to be honest, the Soviet threat was not deterred. You know, they all slap themselves on the back and say, "Reagan, you did it. You caused them to the fall of the Soviet. You bankrupted them."
Right, Reagan didn't cause that.
No, they faked their own demise.
Right.
And he got the applause, and the mainstream media gave him the credit because they could hook conservatives into believing that the fall of the Soviet Union was real, but it wasn't. It was a carefully crafted deception.
They reinvented themselves.
That's right, and they're still there, and they're stronger than ever now, and that strike is still coming.
I remember there was a story, I think it was almost 90% of the KGB was left intact after the fall of the Soviet Union. They just changed their names, changed the name of the organization, FSB.
Right. Yep.
All right, here, another quote. John Bolton. UN Security Council weapons inspectors have uncovered evidence that North Korea is trafficking in weapons of mass destruction technology. This information should be a pivot for the U.S. and Europe. End quote. Well, we know North Korea has been selling weapons for years to the Middle East. It's got missiles, you name it. No. Yeah. Quote, UN inspectors have reported that North Korea is selling Syria elements for the manufacture of chemical weapons. This I can't countenance easily.
No. Well, this is not true. He's just going on the UN propaganda,
that's
they
party.
did
That's right.
to bolster the excuse of the U.S. getting in there and trying to attack Syria, but this is not true. These types of stainless steel pipes and acid-resistant tiles have many, many industrial uses, and this is certainly not an entire chemical weapons factory by any means.
No. Quote, the two Korean teams, Olympic teams, have marched together in 3 prior Olympic Games. It is all a propaganda stunt to distract from the fact that there will be no change in North Korea's nuclear weapons program, end quote.
Once again, right on. Although it was a much bigger propaganda stunt this time, thanks to South Korean President Moon, who is very much in the camp of the left, who doesn't view North Korea as an enemy.
No, he's going to be a bit of an obstacle, I think.
He is, yeah.
They may have to do something about that. Okay, those are quotes from John Bolton, and I think all of you who understand Joel's strategic analysis earlier on, that Donald Trump is a man who wants to say yes to people. It's his essence. He wants to please. He wants to be looked to as an agreeable man, and so it doesn't seem. I can see him saying no to Tillerson. I can see him saying no to McMaster, but I don't see him saying no to Bolton nearly as easily.
Yeah, I would concur with that, Jeff. I think we're going to see the scales have been tipped strongly now in favor of an eventual strike against North Korea. Now, whether or not it be the right thing, whether or not Mattis, who is a little bit of a weakling there in defense, will actually do the right thing, I'm not sure. But I think the scale has been tilted more towards eventual conflict with North Korea than the acceptance of a peace agreement.
So how long will this talk charade go on, do you think?
I think that Bolton could shorten it. It may not be 6 months. He could shorten that to give it 2 months, give it a month, and then call it quits. I wouldn't be surprised at that. Yeah.
So he'll put the pedal to the metal, and nothing happens. He's not going to buy into it. So we could see something, early fall. Now, how much longer will Trump keep, or the Pentagon, keep the nuclear attack groups there and keep these troops on readiness? I mean, this has been going on for, 6 months? Something like that.
Yes. Well, it's been, about 4 since the third carrier was on station. But I'll tell you, that's expensive, keeping those carriers there, and they can only do so many exercises. So as I say, I think that if Bolton weren't in there, if it were McMaster, he'd be telling the president, no, these talks are going to go on for 6 months to a year. You better pull back the carrier groups. But I think they'll stay under Bolton because he's going to make a decision and push Trump to make a decision before the 6 months.
Absolutely.
Period.
I think that's the big elephant to watch. Will the carrier groups stay there, or if they're stood down and pulled back for refueling, refitting, and blah blah, sent to Pearl Harbor, sent to Seattle, then you're looking at months. That's a big break. All right, here's another story that we got just a few minutes here. It's a little bit of a different change of topic, but not all that much. This was a bit of a worrisome thing. Headline: a top U.S. general who is head of the strategic plans and policy at the Pentagon has recently issued an ominous and shocking statement noting that U.S. soldiers should be prepared to give their lives defending Israel. You see that?
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you here. With the largest joint U.S.-Israeli air defense exercise ever conducted having recently concluded, which involved over 2,500 American service personnel, and in the midst of the heightened Israeli involvement in the Syrian war, we find ourselves asking, are U.S. troops ready to fight and die for America's Israeli defense? We think not, but there are U.S. generals out there enthusiastically promoting the idea. Earlier this month, in the midst of the 9th annual 12-day massive joint exercise named Juniper Cobra, blah, 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 U.S. 3rd Air Force Commander Lieutenant General Richard Clark spelled out just such a scenario, wherein U.S. troops could be asked to fight and to die for the defense of Israel, even to the point of being placed under Israeli commanders responsible for battlefield decision-making. While major joint military exercises involving significant troop deployments are nothing new for the U.S. and its allies, Juniper Cobra itself has been conducted annually for nearly a decade. Lieutenant General Clark's words to Israeli media are truly precedent-setting and shocking, especially as he is among the highest-ranking military officers in the U.S. Armed Forces.
Well, I might say in response to that 3 weeks ago I had a major issue in the World Affairs Brief about the fact that I had said that Israel is getting ready to attack Syria in the name of attacking Iran.
Right.
It would be a surrogate war of Syria against Iran. And that was the original purpose of the U.S. trying to intervene in Syria, was to take down Syria so that Israel could get at Iran. And that I'm still predicting that's going to happen this year. Whether or not North Korea interferes with that, I don't know yet, but that's coming soon. Israel is clearly preparing and setting up their own people for a possible war with Syria over Iran and Hezbollah too. And so this looks like this American general is playing right into that by not only the exercise being planned to get America's ties closer to Israel, but to prepare to talk the American people into joining the fight on behalf of Israel.
This article goes on to say, and it appears that both military leaders, both of them, Clark and whoever the Israeli counterpart, are in agreement on this point, that they are ready and willing to put U.S. troops in harm's way in pursuit of Israeli defense policy. Disturbingly, Clark acknowledges willingness for life and death battlefield decisions impacting American soldiers to be placed in the hands of the Israeli chain of command. He said, quote, if there is a question in regard to how we will operate, the last vote will probably go to the Israeli General Staff. Sounds like a pretty damn big sellout to me.
Well, it does. The only positive note in that is the Israeli command is extremely competent and certainly wouldn't be making any battlefield mistakes, but the entire general war would be a mistake, just like most neocon intervention in the Middle East. Right.
Well, I think also that they would probably be more apt to use American troops for cannon fodder rather than Israeli troops, if the situation came down to that.
There's another possibility here, too, that I might remind you of that I think I mentioned before, and this could be one of the ways in which the globalists could get Israel to provoke a war in the Middle East to stop Trump from intervening in North Korea. This could...
of course. Good. Very good. Very astute.
Because Bolton is already inclined towards attacking Iran, he could be very easily transfer his passion from North Korea to Iran if Israel provokes a war in North Korea, in the Middle East.
Interesting. Very good. All right. Joel Skousen and yours truly, I would like to remind you, his World Affairs Brief comes out tomorrow on Friday, every Friday, on the world's preeminent political, geopolitical, and military analytical newsletters. So get a free copy. Just write to Joel, editor at worldaffairsbrief.com, and ask for just say, heard you on Jeff, please send me a copy, and you'll enjoy it. The weekly World Affairs Briefs, Joel, have been cutting edge lately. There's so much to discuss. You always seem to grab the most important issues and lay them right out, and that's critical.
Yeah, this week's will be no exception. It's got some tremendous information in it.
Very good. Thank you, my friend. We'll see what happens, huh?
Okay, we'll be in touch. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, Joel. Good night.
Bye.
Joel Skousen, and just really superb analysis. Agree or disagree, he knows his stuff.